Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today we're going to work on a project that's from the 1970s. It's one of these reels that was made in Japan. It's a workhorse. It's really hard to break these reels, and they're typical of what was coming out in the 1970s. Now this one is a Ryobi. It's called the Catcher. It's #2 locomotive, and it's right up there with the Pen Silver series, which was the 101s, 2s. I don't know if there's a 2, 3, 4, 5. This one would be like the 104. It's not a ball bearing reel, but it is a very well engineered and heavy duty reel that has lasted. This one's probably close to 50 years old and it's still going strong. The problems you had with these reels, typically in whether it was a pen reel or whether it was the Ryobi or the Daiwa Silver series or the like, the paint over time did corrode, particularly if it was used in a saltwater environment. And in this one, probably had a hard life. I got a little bit of a rock going in this rotor here, and that might be difficult, if not impossible, to tighten up. We're going to go see. Usually this one's held on by a C-clip rather than a rotor nut. We have the paint loss, as noted. We have a replacement screw. That's not unusual. Lost badge and the like, but this isn't a collectible reel anyway. This reel can be had for a few dollars at a local flea market, and you'll find the condition issues similar to this. His loss of plating, which or paint, whatever that might have been up there. Looks like it may have been black paint. And other than that, the reel does turn. Does have a good anti-reverse, and this has what I call the bang bail. As it comes over here, it's going to bang the side of the case, and that's going to push the bail closed. So we're going to take this one apart. We'll show you how it's made. If you have one of these, we'll show you how to service it. And if you're thinking of buying one or you see one at a flea market and you're a little bit curious about the reel, well, that's kind of what this video will serve the purpose of. So we start by taking off the exterior pieces, and as we do, I want to thank our first responders and essential personnel for everything it is that they've done along the way to keep us safe from this pandemic. It's not over. It's getting better, but it's not over yet, and there's a lot of people still in the hospitals and still becoming infected by that, and these folks are there every day in, day out helping them, and I want to thank them for it. So here we go. We have a long through screw on this one, and you can probably tell by just looking at it, there's a lot of bad grease on there, and that's kind of part of the service here, is to just simply clean it up and restore the grease. We can tell also that there's some accumulation of old dirt and like sitting inside the case here. So when we take this case off, we'll try and get as much of that dirt and grease out of there as we can. All right, the handle comes off with that. You can tell that we've lost a lot of the chroming on this one. It's all buckled, or what we call boat rash. It does have a swing function here where you can swing it, but it doesn't seem to be working very well. Not unusual. It's frozen in place. We'll put some penetrating oil on there, let that sit. It may or may not solve the problem, but it's not a problem that needs to be solved. You can always work this without worrying about the handle release there, and just making it compact for travel. All right, we have 3 screws. As I mentioned, one of them is a replacement screw. The other 2 appear to be original to the reel. So let's see if we can get these out. Sometimes they get stuck. In this case, this one started up and is coming out quite easily. And what I like to do when I do these is mark the locations of these and note whether these are the same size or not. This one's a relatively long screw. It's not unusual to have different size screws in the side plate depending on how the manufacturers build the reels. In this case, you'll notice we're missing the tag on this side, but the other side has the tag. And this one is a replacement screw here. And quite honestly, you're never quite sure what you're going to find when somebody puts a replacement screw in there. It may or may not match. In this case, it's pretty good, but I'm just going to mark the location in case they change the thread or something. We just don't want to damage 2 of the thread holes, so we'll just make sure it goes back in the same place. With those 3 removed, you can remove this, and wow. So there's a reason why I wear a protective glove, to keep a lot of that grease and grime and junk off of my my hand. And it looks like we got some cleanup to do here, and we'll get started. So I clean this up generally by using cotton swabs, just to mop up a lot of this old grease. Somebody just had a lot of fun with this. This almost looks like putty, but I've seen worse, and of course I've seen a lot better. But the problem with too much grease is that typically it will trap dirt and debris, and it will bog down performance. And the other problem with the too much grease is if you don't stay on top of this grease, it will dry out and congeal, and then it'll bog down the performance of the reel. I just did a bait casting reel the other day, one from the 1950s, and it was really turning poorly. And the reason it was turning poorly is all the grease had just dried and basically become a glue. All right, so I mopped up a good amount of that. I'm putting some penetrating oil and just going to set that case off to the side for a moment. And we'll come back and try and deal with this case. I'm just going to try and get as much of this old grease out of here as I can before we go much further. Now there's a pin and a crosswind arm here. So you want to pull a pin just like that, and then you can pull out the axle shaft next, and then you can remove the crosswind assembly, and then you can remove the main gear, and then we can clean up the rest of this stuff. So let's go ahead and do it. It looks like it has a couple of different versions of grease in here, and it looks like whoever did this the last time simply just decided to throw some more grease on top of it rather than cleaning the old grease off, which would have been the right thing to do here. So we're going to do our best here to remedy that situation. It was turning easily, which is good. And as I mentioned, one of the problems I have here is I have a rocking rotor, and that's kind of hard to fix because there isn't a nut on here that's going to help me correct that. What there is there's just a little clip. You can see the clip holding it there. And we may be able to put a washer in there, but by the same token, if we put the washer in there, it may just be too tight to be effective in terms of the spinning of the rotor in that. So we'll get some of this old grease out of here, and we'll just take another look at this. But these things were rather simple in design. It's typical of the time. If you were looking at a Penn, again, the Penn Silver Series more so than the Daiwa Silver Series, but if you're looking at a Penn Silver Series reel at the time, made in Japan, you would pretty much find the same thing going on inside here. So there were a couple of trade reel manufacturers in Japan in the 1970s, and it's not unusual to find the same manufacturer making reels for different companies. So you would find Penn didn't make the reel, and you would find Kmart reels made there. You would find Sears Roebuck reels made there. All kinds of brands. And over time, you get inside of it and you see it's the same components essentially, just with a little bit of a different coloration in terms of the case color or the like. And that was okay. They served their purpose. Shakespeare's another one, had some reels manufactured over there in the 1970s, and they all performed pretty well. Okay, here's what's holding that rotor on. It's simply a horseshoe clip here, if we can get it out. Got a lot of grease to continue to go through, but there we go. So this clip here is what's holding the rotor on, and it looks just like a horseshoe. That's why I've so named it. Now we should be able to just remove the entire rotor. We got a little bit of junk and debris in there, no surprise. Let's just clean that out. Looks like just a big piece of dried grease. I'm going to use a paper towel here as well. And while I'm doing this, just a suggestion, if you like to watch reels being repaired or get an idea of how reels are made or anything like that, then you're on the right channel, and I would ask you to subscribe. And if you do subscribe, hit the notification button, and that way you'll see everything that I'm posting, and you can decide whether that's a reel that you want to see how it works and how to service it and so on. Or you may actually have the reel And I'm just looking to tune it up and looking for some hints or a little preview of what's to come in terms of what you will see on your side. And hopefully the reel you have doesn't quite look like this in terms of grease and junk, but that's okay. If you're going to take your time to tune the reel up, take your time to clean it and everything else as well. There's no rush here. Just simply get the old stuff off. It's probably got some old sands or salts or debris in here, so just get it out of there. That way it'll turn nice and free and you don't have to worry about it clearing the tracks. Alright, we've got the most of that out. Just going to take a hard brush then, like a toothbrush or the like. I'm just going to clear the tracks of the teeth here. Again, pretty simple design. I'm going to also clean off that clip. And you can't see off camera, but I do have a parts tray where most of this stuff is going in. And once I clean those parts, we're going to put those back into the tray so we don't lose them. Alright, this one's been soaking for a little bit with that penetrating oil on it. Let's finish the cleaning on this. Penetrating oil is good. It loosens up all of the pieces and parts and loosens up the old grease. And I like to use it as a general degreaser. I think that works fine. I like to use it for freeing stuck parts. That's a good idea too. I don't recommend using it for lubrication. I know it says, you know, you can be used for lubrication. But to me, I would rather use a fishing reel oil or grease in those situations rather than a penetrating oil, and I would recommend that you do the same. There's just one little cavity here. I'm going to just run a screwdriver blade through, and I think that's about as good as I'm going to be able to do with this one. I'll set that aside. Got the other case here, which has been sitting, so we'll do the same thing with this. We've had some penetrating oil in there. It's enabling me to knock off some of the lacquered pieces now. And unfortunately, I don't think we're going to be able to tighten that rotor up. But that's probably a consequence of 50 years of grinding it down. We'll just take a look, but I think for the most part, we're going to have to just accept that that's the way it's going to be. And this reel doesn't cost a lot, so I think you just live with it. If you start to get a bad line crawl on when it winds, if you start seeing it kind of winding in a figure 8 pattern or that, then it's pretty much beyond repair at that point, short of getting a new rotor or horseshoe clip. Okay, so we've got a clean body now. We can take our main gear. We're going to use a fishing reel grease. In this case, I'm going to use Penn Precision Reel Grease. I'm going to use that to get the teeth all greased up again. And don't go wild with this. When you do the greasing, there's not a lot more that you want to do with it, because if you over grease, it's just going to wind up in the case like you saw before. We're going to take a minute here. We're going to grease the pinion gear, which is attached to the rotor, and then we're going to install that before we install the main gear. So this comes down. Oh, got a little bit more dirt. Everywhere you turn, you got more dirt in this one. And that might be why the rock, because there's quite a bit of old grease just kind of hanging there, and it's possible that the other one didn't pull it down. Alright, let's see what we can do by putting the clip in now. Yeah, we're still going to have a little bit of a rock in that, and that's unfortunate, but there's not much you can do there. And it's hard to put a washer behind there because of the diameter of this, so I think we're just going to have to live with that as a condition of this reel. While I have this reel open, I'm going to just use that penetrating oil again, and I'm going to just hit the sides of the bail. The bail was working fine. There's no spring or anything on this side. The spring action would be on this side with the line gatherer or line roller, and you can do well just to oil it and just spin it to make it loosen up. The only time you want to pull a bail spring is when the bail's not working, and then go ahead. But I get a whole lot of people contacting me, sending me their reels because they've taken the bail springs out. And I'm not saying don't do it, but I'm saying if you don't need to do it, you don't have to do it. Alright, so just cleaning up this crosswind arm now. That goes next. So we want to get a little bit of grease onto this. We get on the back side. That's the one that's going to be spinning against that main gear. We'll load that up. We took there's a main washer that goes on top to hold that crosswind arm in, and there was two little shim washers to keep the gear centered. Now we can take our axle shaft. We're going to take the spool off in a moment, and we'll go deal with the washers inside of this, but for now we're just going to load this up. A little bit of grease on the spool shaft doesn't hurt. The optimal word is little. If you put too much in there, you're only going to squeeze it out as it comes through the pinion gear. Now we're going to grab that pin. This is a visual. You got to line the pin. You got to line it with the axle shaft. And then you got to work it through on the other side. So that when you meld the two, it lands in that groove. And that's, you'll know it's in the groove when you can take a visual, you'll see it's in the groove. And this will also be down. And if you like, you can spin it at this point just to make sure everything's working properly. Okay, just we're going to close this back up. There's a little bit of dirt here. We can go ahead and take care of that too. No sense not cleaning up the case. Okay, and then we can just reload the side plate. You want to make sure as you do this that you have your anti-reverse locked. I can hear it clicking now, so it's set properly, but don't go closing up your case if the anti-reverse isn't working there. Alright, we'll put these back together. We'll go up top. We'll service the drags on this one. We'll understand that there is a problem with the rock in the rotor, and that's just something we're going to have to live with. And otherwise, this reel is ready to go fishing again. So if you have any questions, please leave questions in the comments section. I do try to respond to the questions that come about from this video. Also, it doesn't have to be about this particular reel. It can be about any reel in general. Maybe you're working on one and you're stuck. You're looking for some hints or a helping hand in terms of how to get unstuck. If I know the answer, I'll be happy to give that to you. Just leave the comments in the section. And finally, if you have a reel that needs to be repaired, and you're not up for doing it yourself, well, I repair reels by mail as well. And you can contact me on the information on the business card that follows. Please send me an email, and I'll be happy to provide you with the service and repair information. Alright, we're just going to put this on. It's a long screw there. Get it all in. Cleaning this up a little bit more from all the stuff that's been laying around on it. And we'll go up top, service the drag. So what have we learned so far? It's a solid reel. It's a dependable design. It's been working for 50 years. The gap has become pronounced in the rotor, but not terribly. It'll work. And this reel can go fishing again. So we're going to take the adjuster knob off. We're going to pull our spool. In our spool there's a spring that rides in a little gap here. Pull that. I'm going to find out what we have in here. Usually we have plastic washers, and they just simply need to be clean. Sometimes it's more than that. And in this case, we wouldn't expect anything else than a little bit of dirt and debris in here. These top drag systems take a lot of abuse, especially in salt water. All of the debris kind of gets under that drag adjuster knob and settles in that drag stack, and over time, if you don't service these, they will stick together and you'll lose your drag. Okay, so the first one up was this little kind of a collar washer below. In this case, I'm just trying to figure out what we got here. I think it looks like basically just have a metal drag stack. Oh, nope, there's a fabric washer. I have one fabric washer here. That's it, one fabric washer. That's interesting. Should have two, but we don't. And I'm just going to assume that that's the way this thing was designed. I don't know this reel enough to say that I can say differently. So we'll go with the one. Usually when you see three metal washers, you see three drag washers, comparable. But this was stacked tight when I pulled that clip. There wasn't any room in there, like one of them is missing. So we'll just kind of assume that. All right, we've cleaned up our drag washers. You have two round ones and an eared washer in the middle. We've already put one of these round washers in the bottom. I'm going to put the second one in the middle there. Then we have the eared washer, which goes in a slot. Then we have this top washer. And we're full, so I guess that's kind of the way this was designed. Find this slot inside the cavity of the drag stack there. Hold that spring, because it is going to shoot if you don't pay attention to it. Make sure that it gets seated in those slots. And we're just set to reattach this. This will take a little bit of doing because there's a D shape on the, there we go, D shape on those washers, and you have to get that squared up properly with the shaft, the axle shaft. Okay, so that's that. Let's just tighten it down. I'm sure it's going to hold. It's holding nicely, and it will give you some level of drag resistance. All right, there you go. That's it. That's the Ryobi Catcher, the #2 locomotive. I think this is fine. I think we'll find somebody who wants to explore fishing with an older reel. I don't think that the rock in that rotor is going to matter too much, and this one's going to go fishing again. So I hope if you have a reel like this, you learned how to tune it up. If you were just watching this one to understand what the reel is, well, that was the purpose behind this. And if you enjoyed it, please like it at the end of the video. So this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, wishing everybody a great day.